Thank you for coming in this morning. I sit on a number of different committees, and one of them is autism. And last week we had the privilege of having a number of parents in of autistic children to outline the different things that were going on in their children's lives and the difficulties that they were facing. And specifically, we had a number of parents who highlighted difficulties with the CAMS service in relation to their autistic children. And I just give a couple of examples, which is, I mean, the timing is excellent. This was last week, just in the committee room next door. And we had Karen O'Mahony. Now, Karen is the CEO of the Rainbow Centre in Cork, which is a truly excellent centre of for autistic children, and she helps, and they do a lot of private fundraising, and they really genuinely help parents through a whole load of different issues. Now, Karen has a son who is 16, and he's 6'2", and when he was about 5 or 6, he was put on psychiatric medication. And for the first 4 or 5 years of that treatment, Ms O'Mahony told the committee that he was seen every 3 months, monitored his height, weight, his general well-being, his reaction to the medication, as is appropriate for psychiatric medication for a child. Then when he was 11, the doctor changed and he was seen once. And then Ms O'Mahony just says, the doctor said that he was signed off. And I asked her, what does signed off mean? And she said, I don't know, he was signed off. And he hasn't seen a doctor or any supervision since. He's 16, he's 6'2". He has had significant physical development, emotional development, personal development, as all adolescents do. He's an autistic child, prescribed mind-altering medication by the state, and he hasn't been seen for 5 years. Now, I understand from the briefing notes provided that there are close to 9,000 people, whole-time equivalents in CHO4, 1,578 of which work within mental health services. Whose job is it, of those 1,578, to check this child? Whose job is it to check that the check has been done?
I'm sorry, I wasn't sure you were finished.
Mr. Reid,
I might just... I'm familiar with the Rainbow Service.
Michael Fitzgerald wants to come in.
Yeah, maybe.
CHO4 you're referring to. Michael.
Well, I suppose in general, just to talk in general, if the child was under the care of the CAMS service or any of the CAMS services, that child would continue to be under the care of the consultant in CAMS, along with the multidisciplinary team's input. I'm not sure what signed off mean. I presume it meant that the child was discharged, but may not mean that. But if it was discharged, the child would not be with the CAMS services. And I can certainly follow it up, Deputy, for you with regards to it. But that's my understanding of what would be meant.
There's no possibility of the child having been discharged if they remain on medication. Any child on medication, whether it's whether it's psychiatric medication, whether it's medication for epilepsy or any other medication, is monitored and weighed for their reactions, for their feedback, for their height and weight. These are perfectly obvious. Am I saying, is this not obvious? Is this not a thing that happens?
And Deputy, we're more than happy.
No, I'm sorry, but it's not a question of following up the individual case. I'm not raising it as an individual representation to be followed up, although I would like it followed up, please. I'm raising it because it highlights that it is possible within CHO4 for a child going through adolescence not to have been seen for that length of time. Now, we also have the State Claims Agency in here from time to time, and I have concerns not just about the obvious well-being of the child, the pure frustration for the mother trying to provide care for the child, but the obvious failure of management by somebody in that child not having been seen. But what the systemic response to that is, and what the CNAG's concern may be in respect of the liability to the state for that, notwithstanding all of the personal issues.
And again, Deputy, sorry, Chair, it's hard for me to comment on that case.
There's no need to comment on the case. I'm sorry to interrupt you. There's no need to comment on the individual case. Okay. It's how is it that the systems could allow something of that scale to fall through the gap?
No, and it shouldn't. What we have done, in particular related to South Kerry CAMS, we just touched on earlier on, as part of the issues that arose in South Kerry CAMS, we are looking at all the processes all across the country in relation to CAMS. Are they complying in terms of prescription and oversight? Are they complying in terms of 2019 standards that we put in place and revised standards? That's an audit that we're putting in place that will look at, right across the country, Deputy, address some of the issue that you have raised, I've no doubt, and how it can, what are the proper escalation measures, how can somebody, in your experience that you just relayed, happen? It shouldn't happen. I'm not trying to reference that case, but we will follow it up with you.
Ms Margaret Lowndes was also there from Dublin 12, and her son was diagnosed with, had the first part of an ADHD assessment in May. She has rung every single week since then and hasn't had a response. Ms Caroline Poole has 2 children in the CAMS service, one of whom was diagnosed with anorexia and social anxiety, and both of them have been put on medication. Neither of them has been followed up, and the parents are trying to contact. In Ms Poole's case, she outlined to the committee that she has had to guess with her son when to give the next medication. She just has a script. She's guessed the timing. I relay this to you in this way because this is what we heard in the Oireachtas last week directly from parents. This is their actual experience relayed to these committees last week. And I cannot think of any other way of doing it. We represent these people and we interrogate the systems on behalf of these people. I cannot think of any more direct or descriptive way to show how difficult it is for Irish citizens trying to protect their children and do the right thing, to be diagnosed by a system and to have absolutely no follow-up. It wouldn't happen in a hospital. How can it possibly happen with psychiatric medication?
And Deputy, just to share with you, I said earlier on, I've personally met families who have children in CAMS. I've met some children who are in the CAMS system. I've met the CAMS management system as well, all across the country. There's no doubt many children are getting really good care in the CAMS system. You've highlighted areas where there's complete weaknesses. I do believe we will surface, and that's the whole purpose of the national audit of the CAMS system, to identify those issues. That shouldn't be the way treatment people in the CAMS system get. I was personally involved in I led, co-chaired with Minister Helen McEntee at the time, the Young Mental Health Task Force, and addressed many of these issues, both in terms of people progressing through CAMS and then when they progress as adult as well, and the handover process that isn't appropriate. So I believe we will surface many of the issues you've raised. It shouldn't be the case.
Can you explain to me how, and I apologise if I missed this earlier, but how children are transitioned into the adult mental health service?
I might ask my colleague Morris Farron, who's closer to this.
Firstly, Deputy, thank you very much. And in terms of discharge from CAM services, the normal process is that people would be, or young people would be discharged to their GP rather than just services discontinued, and there would be normally engagement between the GP and the CAMS consultant, and the CAMS consultants are and should be available to provide advice to the GP. If that hasn't happened in this case, Deputy, we will absolutely follow up in relation to that. And similarly, I note your the cases you identify in Dublin 12, and certainly I will undertake to follow up on those as well with the Chief Officer for CHO7.
Well, actually, that's fantastic. Thank you, because literally last week, all of the parents had a difficulty. And not only that, but they have many other parents that have difficulties. Mm-hmm. So perhaps we could do exactly that. Mm-hmm. And we could follow up. And I can get a list of names from the parents who are working with different support groups, with Rainbow Services. And it would be absolutely marvellous, because when they go to their GP, the GP can do nothing because it's psychiatric medication. It's not a different form of medication. It's like trying to go to your GP for, neurological medication, epilepsy medication or whatever else. You just can't do it. You have to be seen by the consultant. So we have a whole big long list, and it would be absolutely wonderful for them to be able to get an answer to a phone call and a follow-up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy.
I feel like I'm done.